All right, I've got Joe Huber from Huber Equities and many other things, I'm sure, behind the scenes, probably a ton of LLCs that have been formatted at this point.
It's a lot. We got a laundry list.
I'm sure it is. Super excited to sit down and just chat with you about your journey and honestly just get some advice out there in the ether for some young mentees that are maybe trying to do real estate, maybe trying to do, some entrepreneur sort of things, maybe some charity aspects of their life. Starting things out here, just tell us who you are and as much as your story as you think matters. It doesn't have to be from birth, but maybe wherever you started your career and then what you're doing now.
Yeah, awesome. So my name's Joe Huber. Am I looking at you or am I looking at camera?
Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna chop this up, right?
Absolutely.
Like we can. Okay, cool, great. Awesome. My name's Joe Huber, and I founded Huber Equity Group 12 years ago. I flipped a house, and I never dreamed we'd be doing this. Today, we own about 2,000 apartments across 6 states. We started a brokerage that's starting to pick up momentum and thrive, and we're looking at some other interesting ventures and opportunities. I didn't come from an entrepreneurial background. I didn't come from anything, actually. I got a need-based scholarship to go to Ohio State. I lived with another family through much of my high school career because, my family exploded. And I just had this family took me in and when things were going crazy. And that's where I learned about real estate. That's where I first, experienced Jesus for the first time. And my faith became a central part of who I am. And I felt like God rescued me from a lot of the stuff in my past that, would have held me back and put me on a different trajectory.
100%.
So I get the opportunity to build businesses. And my goal is I want to lay him before his throne, lay him before his feet. And I think that the opportunity to build something for other people is so motivating for me, right? The ability to build a balance sheet, it's not going to satisfy. It's never going to leave you feeling like you did it, achieved it, accomplished it. You just move the goalpost on yourself. But when you can live a life in service to other people, that's such a motivator, and it brings so many consistent little joys along the way. So that's what we're about, and that's why we're trying to do it.
Love it, man.
I started my real estate career flipping houses. I found a house in German Village and bought it, and the day we closed on it, the neighbor walked across the street and offered us twice what we paid for it. I would love to tell you I took the money and ran. Instead, we took that $200,000 profit margin and consolidated it into 150, and it took 2 years to do it. So just like everyone else, my master's degree took me 2 years and cost $50,000, just unaccredited. So I learned it by screwing up a really good deal and turning a great deal into an okay deal.
100%.
So after I flipped that first house, we started flipping houses, and I bought a Vespa scooter, and I went and drove around, these hot neighborhoods looking for rundown properties to fix up. And one house became 3, became 10, became 30. 5 years later, we had about 80 doors of scattered site multifamily, duplexes, 4 units, 12 units, 12 Airbnbs, 3 guys riding around on Vespa scooters, just knocking on doors and cold calling. We were flipping 30, 40 houses a year. It was a amazing experience. But what I also learned through that was focus matters.
Mm.
All of those businesses were profitable, but none of them was scalable while we were trying to do them all.
Sure.
Right. Every time I'd start to get a little momentum in one lane, I'd get distracted by a problem over here. And I think there's early on in your entrepreneurial journey, you say yes to everything, and that's what you get rewarded for. Right? Do you do that? Of course we do that. Do you flip houses? Yes. Own Airbnbs? Of course. Vertically integrated construction? We do that too. But later, as you start to get some momentum, the power comes in saying no.
Sure.
And limiting your scope so you can be really good at one thing. The problem is early on, you don't know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to go find it, and then you can scale down.
So do you feel like that as a strategy, that because I have this conversation all the time of like, what is the trajectory to saying yes to everything and then starting to like focus in and say no to a lot of things? Do you think that's a good strategy, that if you're an early entrepreneur, you should be saying yes? And then at what point do you start to say no? Like, or for your journey, what was it when you started saying no?
Yeah, that's a good question. When you start a business, you have to say yes to everything because you have no money, right? You don't have any resources. You just have your time.
Which, by the way, I want you to get into that, the post you made about like, if you could like afford pizza on a Friday night with your wife, like you would like buy it.
So
after this.
Yeah.
But,
so, okay. When you, hang on, derailed momentum.
Sorry.
No,
I got too excited.
When you start a business, you don't have any resources. You have no money. All you have is time. So you trade your time for dollars and start to figure out what you're good at. You're trying to find your identity as a business owner. And so early on, you say yes to everything that comes across your desk. And so your services creep outward. And then eventually it becomes a distraction. When you feel like you're being stretched in 1,000 directions, that's when it's time to start saying no to profitable things so you can scale that one thing that's really profitable.
Sure.
And that's where the power comes, is once you figure out what you're good at, then you start putting in repeatable systems, repeatable processes. You go from hiring generalists to hiring specialists, and that's where you get this compounded efficiency, because you're used to doing everything, or you and one or two all-purpose players do everything, and now you hire someone who's 5 times better at it than anyone else on your team.
Totally.
And it feels like such an invigorating thing, because you don't have to operate in your weaknesses anymore. You now get to quarterback as a bunch of people that are operating in their strengths.
100%. So what is that now? You're doing something, you're doing one thing, that you're doing it in a repeated way. Can you describe what that is to everybody listening?
Yeah. So for the real estate entrepreneurs out there, don't overcomplicate it. Real estate is just 3, maybe 4 resources. You've got deal flow, a business plan you believe in. You've got capital, yours or someone else's, to fund the deals, usually a combination of both. And you've got execution, team to do the business plan that you believe in. The 4th is sometimes debt. Sometimes debt's easy, sometimes debt's hard. Occasionally it's a commodity, it's harder in the market right now. But if you have those resources and you think about what's holding back your real estate empire, it's just one of those resources. And so if you want to think about, how do I do more real estate deals? Well, if you have an abundance of capital and a shortfalling of deals, go find more deals and don't stop until you blow up that bottleneck. Mm-hmm. That's what we work on.
What are you focused on personally? Like, is there a thing? For me, it's recruiting talent at my company and closing deals, getting money into the company. Those are the 2 things I know I'm good at, so I focus my time and energy. And then all the other stuff, like the administration, the processes, procedure, I know they're important, but I get somebody else to do them because I hate doing those things. What are the things that you spend your time on most?
Yeah, so what I get the opportunity to spend my time on in the business is predominantly, I'm the HEG cheerleader. I am cheering on the team, making sure they have the resources they need. They're excited about what they're working on. I'm helping to problem solve issues. But the reality is that, for example, our asset management team is far more capable of managing on-site property teams than I am. So I just need to make sure they're supported and have the resources.
Totally.
I got to give them what they need and get out of their way.
100%.
Same with our finance team, same with our capital raising team, all of this. So my biggest role in the company right now is setting the vision. What are the types of deals we're going to get behind, problem solving, and making sure the team has what they need to go thrive.
100%. So earlier in the conversation, I cut you off to talk about a LinkedIn post that you made about struggling to buy pizza on Friday. And now I don't know if you're struggling to buy pizza on a Friday. I did buy your Chipotle, so maybe you are. Can you tell us about like the early stage struggle and like how you see through those moments and continue to persevere? Because I think that is one of the hardest things are people that are watching and people that are doing entrepreneur things are struggling with, is like continuing to push through, even though you're maybe not making a lot of money, you're struggling. What are some of the things you did to push through those moments?
Yeah, so in the early days, when I started my real estate journey, my wife was a teacher. She made $41,000 a year, and we lived on her income. And I asked her, I said, hey, if I don't earn an income for a year, is that okay? And jokes on her, it was 5 years before I took a salary or a distribution. I didn't pull a dollar out of the business for 5 years. And every dollar we made rolled right back into the business. It was people, it was properties, and it was processes, right? Just improving what we were doing. And so in the early years, we didn't have anything. We lived on $25,000 a year. We lived on her $41,000 salary and were able to save. My only goal at the time was to make $80,000 a year so my wife could stay home with kids.
Sure.
That's what she wanted, and that's what I was trying to figure out how to do. But you just have to get resourceful.
Yeah.
We had side hustles. We were, dog sitting on the side. We were, moonlighting as a realtor when, just trying to, put money on the food on the table any way you could. But I always believed what we were building was working, and I had these little momentum, confirmations along the way, right? Deals that were going really well that, we always could have started to take some salary, but it was better just to roll it. And I think the longer you can live that really cheap lifestyle, you're going to be weird. Your friends are going to laugh at you. You're going to be the only guy that's, not spending money on things like cars and fancy dinners out and all of that. And that's okay. Your goals are different.
Yeah.
If you want to get something extraordinary, top 0.5%, you have to be willing to live like the top 0.5%, not like the 99%.
Sure. One of the things I admire about you most is that you have a huge heart for giving back to the community. One question I have for you is, in the beginning, when you're like living off of almost nothing like that, do you find it hard to give back? Are you giving back other things? Like, paint the picture for me, because like obviously that heart was in there in the beginning to give back. Now it is giving back hundreds of thousands of dollars for all these different cool things. Well, tell us about like the early you of entrepreneur giving back.
Yeah, giving has always been a big part of my life. I'm not supposed to be a business owner. I'm supposed to be a statistic. A family took me in and it transformed my life. I got a need-based scholarship to go to Ohio State. I'm standing on the shoulders of countless mentors and investors and people that believed in me in the early days. So we always gave a portion, but it became a much bigger portion of what we were doing. And it became the North Star why, kind of around 2019, 2020. My first goal was to go start a business to provide for my family, right? And that goal came and went. And so I really started wrestling with, why am I doing this? What's the point? You get to a point where the next dollar is not going to change my life. My lifestyle is not going to move. So why are we building a business now? So we started rearranged our core values, and now our North Star core value number one is, to whom much is given, much is expected. And so that manifests itself by giving 20% of our profits away to nonprofits that are going to go empower people.
I love that.
Right? At the end of the day, most things will evaporate 100 years from now.
Yeah.
Right? Any wealth you accumulate, any stuff you had, any trips you took, it's all going to be meaningless 100 years from now.
Yeah.
What lasts are people.
Mm-hmm.
Helping people create a better opportunity for themselves. People are made in God's image, which means they're eternal. They have a soul. They are eternal beings. And they're the only thing that are going to last 100 years from now. And so when we have the opportunity to invest in something, we want to invest in people.
Yeah, I love it.
Sharing the good news of Jesus and in giving them the opportunity to make something of themselves.
Sure. You talked about some mentors you had early on. Who were they? What were they saying? What were they doing?
All right. Okay. I'm not going to use it. I'll say some names, but then I won't. Mentors played a big part in my journey. And I always looked for people that were 1 or 2 steps ahead of where I was going. Someone that's 50 steps ahead of where you're going, either they've forgotten how they got there, or the information they're sharing with you is so far advanced you can't use it. So I think the best mentors are just a couple steps ahead, because they can really help you get through the next set of obstacles. And then oftentimes you got to find a new mentor to solve the next set of problems.
Sure.
I had a mentor that, he had 8,000 units at the time when we had a couple hundred, and we're just starting to get momentum. And I remember talking to him and thinking, he's not any smarter than I am. And I'm not that smart, but he's not that smart. He's just been doing it longer and he figured it out. He puts his pants on one leg at a time, just like I do in the morning. And if he figured it out, then we can figure it out. And I think sometimes the difference between achieving a goal and not achieving a goal is your perception of whether or not that goal is possible.
Sure.
Right? I think the mile, right? People used to run miles and be just over 4 minutes. Well, then someone came along and broke the 4-minute mile, and everyone started doing it. Not because it was not possible before or training was that much better. It was like one after another, because they believed it was possible.
Sure.
And I think a lot of ways mentorship does that too. You see someone who's achieved it, your standard for what success looks like goes up when you hang out with more successful people. And so that rubs off on you and you start believing in yourself.
Yeah. Well, what has been, so I've got a few more questions for you. What has been the most challenging thing that you've been through, singular thing, and how did you persevere through it?
There have been so many challenges over the years. But I think one common theme that I've seen is I have seen God be faithful through some really hard things. When I was 14, 15, 16, my family life imploded. And, there was a day when my house wasn't safe anymore. And, I was actually genuinely afraid for my life. My mom was struggling with a lot of really severe mental health stuff. And this other family took me in, and it changed my life, right? I got to see how the Lord provided through that. And then I didn't know how I was going to go to school, right? I didn't know how I was going to go to college. I didn't know if it was going to even be possible. I ended up getting a full tuition and housing scholarship for being a golf caddy, of all things.
Wow.
So I got to see how the Lord provided and all these things. And so I think that gave me the freedom to take more risk and to just trust that we'd figure it out along the way. There have been countless issues in the business, right? There have been countless times where some of those first flips, there was a day we had 3 closings in one day. And if any of those closings would have fallen apart, I don't know how we're making payroll, right? Like it was hanging on by a thread in some of those like 2016, 17, 18 years. And you are all in, right? I mean, I remember getting loans to make payroll and just hoping you can pay it back. A lot of that is past, right? I mean, a lot of those things are past, but I don't think anyone escapes without a couple of those stories.
Sure.
Right? If you want to build something great, you have to figure out how to live with the stress,
Totally.
how to live with the unknown.
Yeah.
Elon Musk says starting a business is like staring into the darkness and eating glass. It's painful, right? You're eating glass and you're walking into the darkness. You don't know what the next step looks like. You can maybe see one step ahead of you, and sometimes it's pitch black and you just got to take another step anyway. And that's what it's like.
Sure.
Right? But just like anything, that stress muscle is a muscle. And so your stress, your perceived stress from the same level of stressor, it diminishes.
Right.
So you can handle bigger and bigger stresses and feel more and more comfortable because you've been there before. You've seen yourself pull through it. You're more resourceful. You've got more tools in the toolbox, more resources to tap into. And it gets easier, and you start to fall in love with the game somewhere along the way.
Sure. And to the contrary, what has been your favorite thing that you've celebrated?
I think if you're an entrepreneur, you are always moving the goalpost on yourself. And especially if you're really driven, it's hard to stop and celebrate because you're already setting the next goal as this one is getting close to wrapping up.
Yeah.
I struggle with celebrating, right? I struggle with it. When I look back 5 or 10 years, 10 years ago, I hoped maybe one day we'd have 100 units. And then I thought maybe one day 1,000 units would be pretty cool. Today we have a couple thousand units across 6 states. I never dreamed we'd do that, right? And I think most people underestimate what they can accomplish in 10 years and overestimate what they can get done in a year. And so you're simultaneously disappointed by what you got done this year, this quarter, this week, and blown away by what you got done this decade.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the most interesting things about being an entrepreneur.
Totally. Want to talk about My Village Ministries and your involvement with them. It seems like the passion may have been struck from life experiences you've been through. Would love to hear a little bit of the story of how that came together.
Yeah, so My Village Ministries, Phil and Mel started it, and they go to my church. We've gone to church with these guys for a long time. Because of my background and living with another family through high school, I was so excited to join them in that. They asked me to be on the kind of founding board really early on. And so one of the things I wanted to do was help them to get the mission out to more and more people. So I believe that, as a business owner, you have wealth that you have to steward, right? You got to figure out what do you do with this money, but you also have network, you have influence, people listen to what you say, right? And so you have to figure out how to steward all those other resources too. So one of the things we did is we started an event for My Village Ministries 5 years ago. In the first year, it was like the net profit of the event was almost dollar for dollar what we were going to give them anyway. And so it was like, why did we plan this event? What were we doing? But 5 years later, it has grown so much. There's, over 1,000 people have come through the event and, have been added to the My Village ecosystem. And when I look at my life and what I want to be, it's not just a real estate guy, right? I want to be a man that lays his life down and serves others. And this is a way that we can do that, right? That you can invite people like your vendors and your team and, all the people that are going to listen to you because of what you've done, use it for good, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the goal. The goal is to lay it all down at his feet.
Sure. I love it.
Revelation 4 talks about the throne room of God, right? And there's just this picture of just absolute glory. And these elders, they take the crowns off their head and they lay it before the throne. And that crown isn't just their wealth. It's their kingdom, it's their land, it's their subjects, it's their influence, it's their status, and it's their wealth. And I think when you lay that crown before his throne, you get the opportunity to see all the things he's blessed you with become a blessing for others.
Totally.
Whoever seeks to find his life will lose it. Whoever loses his life for his sake will find it. And so there's something intoxicating or joy-bringing about laying your life down for the throne. And that often looks like laying your life down for others. It means putting yourself last. It means, spending less than you could so you can give to these other causes. It means using your influence, spending those relational asks on something other than just your goals and trying to, help someone else, help groups like My Village. The one interesting thing that happened since we put our 20% giving mandate in, we had a 20% giving mandate. We give 20% of our profits away. And something interesting that happened is we've had sellers sell us deals at a discount to other offers and say, hey, this other guy offered me 10% more, but I really like your giving mandate, so I'm going to sell to you. We've had team take pay cuts to come join us because they wanted to be a part of something bigger than just building some rich guy's balance sheet. We have had capital invest with us and say, yeah, I used to invest with so-and-so, but I really like your mission. I never dreamed any of that would happen. And I think when you just genuinely try and help and genuinely try and give and be generous, people flock to you. It's a really attractive quality. And my experience has been far more success than I ever dreamed because of that in many ways.
I love it. Last question for you, and we'll wrap things up here. Any last words for the mentees out there, the folks that are trying to get into real estate, or maybe they're in a little bit, but not all the way?
There's this clip of Tom Brady on a 60 Minutes interview that I think is so impactful. They ask him, Tom, what is it like being you? You're Super Bowl MVP for the umpteenth time. You're rich and famous beyond your wildest dreams. Everyone knows you. Everyone else wants to be you. You married the supermodel. And he kind of stops and pauses and looks at the camera. And he says, there's got to be something more. Is this it? I think most people spend their whole life trying to get to the top of a mountain that they'll never reach. And if they did, they would realize it's empty. It's meaningless, right? And so my challenge to people is often, yes, climb the mountain. Yes, do it. But don't think it's going to satisfy you, right? And C.S. Lewis would say, if you find yourself with a longing that nothing in this world can satisfy, perhaps the best explanation is you are made for another world.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there's no amount of success, no amount of, achievement's gonna fill that God-sized hole that only he can fill.
100%. Well, Joe, thank you so much. Appreciate you, brother.
Yeah.